A brand new edition or episode of Hair Mistakes That Age You Faster, subscriber edition. And allow me to introduce you to Chris. Well, Chris is unfortunately making a couple mistakes with her hair that are robbing some of that youthful look from her. And today, I'm going to walk you through what those mistakes are, more importantly, how she can correct them. And as I always say, I'm not as mean as I might sound. If you're new to this is a series where I actually take subscribers from this channel that have submitted photos for this specific purpose, and we walk through the mistakes that may be going on with their hair and how they can correct them so that you can kind of learn from what's going on with their hair and hopefully give you a little insight. And a lot of you comment about me always wearing hats. God, I bet you love this one. Woo! This is a great one. Hey, come on. Safety first, folks. Safety first. All right, let's go talk about the mistakes. Okay, and many of you might be wondering, who is this guy and why is he talking to me about hair? One, riding a bike out in the woods. That's a great question. My name is Justin Hickox. I've been doing hair since 1995, and I prefer to take you on adventures while I teach you about hair. Oh, and you remember Rhonda? Yeah, well, I have an update. Stick around for that. You're not gonna wanna miss it. Okay. Now on to the mistakes. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go through the mistakes that are happening. And then before I actually show you on her what it would look like if we address those mistakes the way that I would recommend addressing them, I'm gonna talk to you real quickly about the concerns that she's having. When she sent me the email, she also sent me an email with some concerns, some things that are going on. And so we're gonna address those concerns because quite honestly, I think a lot of you might actually have these same concerns. And I think you got a lot to learn from it. So I'm excited to share that with you. But first, let's talk about the mistakes. The first mistake I'm seeing is the front is a little bit too short for the length in the back. And what that's to say is that it's cut a little too far back behind the ears. There's a little bit too much layering going on. Now, it's not that you can't have short layers in the front and still have long hair. It's to say that if it's too short, too far back, that's when it starts to look from the profile like it's dragging down. Now, if you look at this profile picture, you see that it draws your eye directly down to the back of her head instead of lifting your eye up. Mistake number two is that there's just a little too little volume on top. There's not enough volume on top. And the concern with this is that when there's not enough volume on top, it actually creates the illusion that there's more volume on the sides. And that's actually what leads us in directly to mistake number three, which is that there is simply too much volume on the sides. Now, when these two concerns go hand in hand, the problem is it creates a little indent right around the temples. That indent has a tendency to make the sides look extra wide, the top look extra flat, and it ends up only accentuating cheeks instead of cheek structure. We actually kind of want the opposite. We want the volume up in the temple area and a little less through the cheeks so that we can create a bit more of that accentuated cheekbone versus just adding width around the cheeks. Now, mistake number four is that her hair is all pulled back away from her face. Now, this is actually going to get into one of the concerns that she mentioned in her email, so we'll talk a little bit more about this here in a second. But right now, bringing that hair off of her face actually accentuates a bit more of the thinness that's around her hairline and kind of around that temple area. So with all that said, let's change backdrops here real quick, and let's talk about the email that she sent, and more importantly, exactly what my recommendations to address these concerns will actually look like on her. Let's do that. Oh, and like always, there's going to be some curveballs at the end, so yeah, okay. Okay, so before I show you what these suggestions would actually look like on her, let's talk about the email that she sent me, what her concerns are, and how those concerns guided my decisions on what I would suggest. Now, also, I'm going to be talking specifically about exactly what I would do or how I would address each of these individual concerns. Now, here's the email that she sent, and here are the main points to take away from this. The first main point is that she feels like her hair is thin and fine. Second main point is that the receding hairline at her temples is a big concern for her. Third, she considers herself classy, but a bit of funky, and she's considering going shorter. The fourth main point is that she's never, ever colored it. Now, those are all the things that I took away, so let's take a look at what my suggestions are, see how they would look on her, and then tell you exactly what I would do from there and how I'd address these concerns. Now, the first concern was that we mentioned that length in the back was too long for the length in the front. So this kind of lends itself to the original thought that Chris actually had about taking her length a little bit shorter. The way I would address that concern would be to actually take the length a little bit shorter. And if we did that, this is what that would look like. Now, as you can see, the second we bring this length up a bit, it starts to help to bring and lift that eye up and not drag it down and point back towards her back so much. Now, the second big concern, or the second and the third really kind of compound each other, was the lack of volume on top and the excessive volume on the sides, which created a little bit of that indent around the temples. So if I actually add a little bit more volume on the top and around the temples and not even remove any volume from the sides, here's what that looks like. Now what you can see is, even though we didn't remove the volume from the sides, the overall balance is a lot stronger. It accentuates more of the cheek structure instead of just adding width to the cheeks, and overall gives her, in my opinion, a much more refreshed and more lively feel. Now the last mistake that we talked about was having her hair pulled back off her face. Now while I fully understand this concern, my suggestion would actually be to wear some of those bangs or that front section down a little bit and actually bring it into her face. Not necessarily a bang, but just down into her face a bit more to create a little bit more accentuation of the cheek structure. And honestly, I think it just gives her face a softer look. And so if we did that, this is what that looks like. Now, as you can see, it just adds, again, a little bit of vibrancy to the overall shape. It's one of those scenarios where it's not a huge thing, but that little bit goes a long way. And in reality, if you actually take that a little bit shorter around the bangs, it'll have a tendency to make that area look a little bit denser and therefore combat some of the concern of the thinness in the temples. Now, don't forget, we're going to talk about Rhonda, and I'm going to catch you up on what's going on with her. But before we get to that, I want to talk about addressing the exact concerns that Chris mentioned in her email. The first concern that she had was that she feels like her hair is thin and fine. If you feel like you've got thin and or fine hair, you're going to need some sort of volumizing product to create that volume. Not only do we need a foundation from product, we need the right cut. If you feel like your hair is a little bit on the thinner side, bringing that length a bit shorter, 9 out of 10 times is going to have the tendency to make your hair look denser. Now, her second concern was the recession at the hairline. She's considering going a little bit shorter, and she feels a little bit classic, but at the same time a little bit funky. And her concern of never coloring her hair ever in the past, those are going to lead us into the actual curveballs that I've got. Let's talk about the recession concern and the color concern at the same time. The biggest concern is that she said, I've never colored my hair before. So this honestly may not even be on the table at all. And if you've watched any of my episodes before, you probably know where I'm heading with this, but wait for it, because I think you're going to see what I'm talking about here. And you're going to agree with me. Many times, the lighter hair is, the thinner it will look. The darker hair is, the denser it will look. So in the situation where you feel like you've got very fine hair or a lot of thinness in certain areas, especially around the hairline, adding a few lowlights or even a little bit of a darker base can help to create a little bit of illusion of more density. It will be a little bit more maintenance. Well, obviously it'll be more maintenance than not ever coloring your hair, but it won't be a ridiculous amount. We're talking going in to get them retouched every maybe 4 months or so. Okay? But if you are willing to do that, adding this little bit of low lighting will definitely help to create the illusion of more density. This is what that would look like. Now, not only is it giving the illusion of more density, it's also giving a little bit more movement and texture to the overall shape. If you're trying to ride that line between classic and edgy, there's two main ways to do that. One is to create a very edgy cut, or the other is to create a little bit less of an edgy cut, something that's a little more on the classic side, but bump that edgy factor up a little bit with color. So this might be a great option for you to get a little bit more movement and texture in the cut, give it a little bit more of a funkier, edgier feel, not overboard, but still have that classy essence. Okay, and the last thing she said was she is thinking about going a little bit shorter, and she does want a little bit of a funky, maybe a little bit different look. So this is another curveball. Now, the reason I like this particular shape is because it does have a lot of movement, it has a lot of texture. It's a little bit on the shorter side, but not too short. It still will definitely give the illusion of a little bit more density because of the length. And then if you mixed this with some sort of highlights or lowlights, it would even give it more dimension. And there you go. So, as always, the big question is, what do you think? Do you think she should do lowlights? Do you think she should cut it shorter? What are your thoughts? You know where it is. Comment below. Oh, and some of you are probably waiting to learn about what's going on with Rhonda. Well, let's talk about it. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar with Rhonda, this is Rhonda. Now, Rhonda was one of the first few episodes in this entire series, and we walked through some of the concerns that you're having, as well as some suggestions and some curveballs, just like always. So many of you have been wondering, well, do these people actually take his advice? They actually do what he talks about or change at all? Or do they just think he's crazy? I wouldn't be shocked if they thought I was crazy, so that's probably something that I should know too. But with that said, Rhonda did reach back out, and she did let me know that she made a change, and she sent me photos so I could see what that looked like. Do you want to see what she did? Okay, and this is a change that Rhonda made. How amazing does that look? Come on now. Comment below and let me know, what do you think? I think she made a great decision, but more importantly, if I'm completely honest, I'm actually quite humbled that she decided to take my advice and do something so quite different. So first of all, Rhonda, thank you very much for trusting me, and I'm so glad that you love it. I think it looks incredible. And Chris, thank you so much for throwing out your photo and being a part of this series. And all of you guys, thanks for all the interaction that we get on these videos and all the love and support that you guys are showing to everybody that is involved in this. You guys are kind of awesome. So remember that. All right, with all that said, you know what to do. Comment below and watch that right there. Yeah, that one. So you can learn more. And I'll see you right there. See you later. Bye.